Hey everyone, hola a todos. Welcome. It's me, David. I am the Spanish editor at Babel. I am in charge of the Spanish courses that we produce. And I am very happy to be back again here after a 2 weeks break. Last time we had a very, very exciting session where we talked about stress marks. But before we mention anything else on this topic, I'd like to welcome my friend and colleague, David. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi everyone, buenos días, yo estoy bien. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros como siempre. Thanks for being here with us as always. We love to see you returning. Our viewers are so amazing. This is so much fun. Y nosotros nosotros les hemos echado de menos. We have missed you all a lot. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, David. I'm so happy to be back again. And David, tú fuiste de vacaciones, ¿no? ¿Cómo fueron?
Sí, yo fui de vacaciones a Italia. Estuve una semana. La semana pasada estuve cerca de Milán.
Mm.
La situación está un poco, bueno, es diferente en tiempos de COVID. The situation is a bit different. Volar es un poco extraño también. It's kind of weird to fly because you have to wear the mask everywhere. But I'm very excited to be back. I love Berlin. I'm broadcasting from Berlin, Germany. And welcome everyone. I see that you are watching us today from Inglaterra. Hola a todos allí en Inglaterra. Hola a todos en Estados Unidos. It's great to have you here. Please post your questions, your comments, whatever you are struggling with, and we will try to get back to you as soon as possible. So yeah, I was in Italy for vacations. I spent 1 week there. Yo visité a un amigo. I visited a friend. He's from Colombia too. Él es colombiano. And él vive en Italia desde hace un año. He's been living in Italy for 1 year. But we are not here to talk about that. Maybe we should get started, David, because if you remember well, 2 weeks ago we talked about stress marks and why they are important and how to recognize and how to use them. Last time we had a long session talking about one of the use cases of accent marks in Spanish. And today we'd like to have a quick review of what we talked about 2 weeks ago, plus something new that we couldn't learn 2 weeks ago. So I hope you are all ready.
Yeah, I remember when I was learning about stress marks and accent marks in Spanish, I needed a lot of time to kind of lock the ideas into my brain. So we want to make sure that if you have any lingering questions, that they all get answered, because this is something that doesn't exist in English. The concept of emphasis and stress, of course, does, and syllables exist in English too. But in Spanish, we have a pretty unique way of indicating where that stress falls. So like David said, we're going to do a quick review of those rules we talked about 2 weeks ago. And then there's a kind of a second part of that lesson we didn't get to cover. So we'll talk about that too.
Yeah, that's great. So I think that we can start, David, with a quick review sentence that I like to use when I am explaining this topic to Spanish learners, which is ellos aprenden coreano en la universidad. I like this sentence because we have very long words like ellos aprenden coreano and universidad with multiple syllables. And there we see that none of these words have an accent mark. So I like this sentence because this is the representation of all these words that we have in Spanish with the specific cases that we introduced 2 weeks ago where we don't need them because they follow a pattern. So let me start with the first part, ellos aprenden coreano. If you remember well, there are many Spanish words that end in S, N, and vowel. These words tend to have the stress on the second to last syllable. Ellos aprenden coreano. So as we can see, the first three words represent the second group that we introduced, which belongs to, which contains all these words ending in vowel, N and S, whose stress is on the second to last syllable. And the first group of words was the one where we see words ending in any consonant that is not N or S, like universidad, where the stress is on the last syllable, universidad. Yeah. So if we learn this sentence, I'm sure we have a great way to start, because any other word that breaks this rule, this word needs an stress mark. So we saw examples like veo fútbol en la televisión. So I am posting this on the screen, where we have a word like football with a stress mark. So this word ends in a consonant, which is not N or S, but the stress is on the second to last syllable. So that's why we need an accent mark. If there wasn't any accent mark, actually we would pronounce this word like football, which is also correct. So yeah, there are two ways to spell this word in Spanish, but there are also two ways to pronounce this word. We can say football, and then we would need an accent mark to stress the irregular pattern there. Or if we remove it, then it would be football. And we learn also some words that end in sion, that are feminine words in Spanish, and they all have accent marks at the end on the O. So I think this was a very, very, very quick review, a summary of what we learned 2 weeks ago. Let us know if you have any other question. We are, of course, very happy to see you playing around with these stress marks. But this is also something, as David said, that comes with practice. So we will have a look. We'll look at many sentences in Spanish. We'll see them, and let's try to use them, because stress marks are very important in Spanish. So, David, do you have any other thing to mention that I forgot?
A couple things. So I see that Crystal has asked, what was the translation of the first sentence, ellos aprenden coreano en la universidad? So that would mean they learn Korean, the Korean language, in university. I mean, in English, we wouldn't really say in the university, but in Spanish, that's how you would say it, en la universidad. So that is the translation there. But the one point I was going to make was with a sentence like that, ellos aprenden coreano en la universidad. We see that la universidad ends in the letter D. So we know that according to the rules we've learned that you would pronounce the stress on the last syllable because it's a consonant that's not N or S. And you'll start to see the same sort of patterns of endings across many words. So David mentioned the ending sion, which is most often identified with feminine nouns, la nación, la televisión. And we see that in most all of those cases, you have an accent mark over the O to indicate that the stress will fall on that last syllable, yon. So you'll start to see that pattern repeat itself in many of the same words, and it'll be easy to read a word like that after a while that ends in sion and know exactly where the stress falls. So I wanted to point out universidad as well, because the ending idad or dad, D-A-D, appears in a lot of words as well. And you'll know that when you start to learn words like these, like universidad, electricidad, electricity, you'll hear that the stress continues to fall on that last syllable. So it'll all start to kind of make sense and align with the same pattern, that the stress in words that end in idad, for example, will always fall on that last syllable. So it's kind of just a matter of getting to know more words, studying more vocabulary, but recognizing patterns of endings that all have the same stress patterns as well.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that was helpful.
Awesome. This is great. So, and as you can see in the example sentences, there are, of course, these very short words with only one syllable. And I think this is the second part that we want to talk about today, which is what happens to these little words, because I'm sure you have already seen them before, where we use also stress marks. So I always like this question because we can start with an example of what happens when we add an accent mark on il and il. So in Spanish, we have two different functions for these stress marks. The first one is the one that we saw 2 weeks ago and we reviewed just a couple of minutes ago, where we have longer words, and these stress marks determine the irregular stress in that word. And in this case, the pronunciation changes as well. So just remember the words football, football. There is also another word that is cocktail or cocktail. Both are correct in Spanish. So as you see, the stress changes a bit, and so the meaning can also change. Like when we say compro, I buy, compro, he bought. So when we have these long words, we use these stress marks to mark, to highlight the irregular aspect of this word. But we have also words with only one syllable where we use these stress marks to actually highlight a change in the meaning. So in this case, we have él with an accent mark, which means he in English, and el without an accent mark, which is the article. When we say, for example, el libro, el cuaderno. It's important to notice here that the pronunciation doesn't change. It's exactly the same, el. It's only the context telling us what we are referring to, whether it is him, él, with an accent mark, or whether it's an article that, of course, needs to be followed by a noun, like el laptop, for example. And David, we have also a bunch of other words that have the same, that follow the same pattern, but it's not that many words. I would say we would like to present the most important ones. So David, what's the next one?
The next one here is on the screen. This is one that used to confuse me a lot because it's a little bit nuanced. It's not as distinct as L and L that we just saw, but it is important to know the difference, and that's between tu and tu. Again, pronounced exactly the same. You could hear them, and if someone just said tu, you wouldn't know which one they're talking about unless the context made it clear. But when we write them out, we actually distinguish one from the other by putting this accent mark. And so tu with an accent mark means you. It's the pronoun, the second person singular informal pronoun, which is just a fancy way of saying you to one person who is not an usted, which is the formal version of tu. So that's the pronoun tu. And then tu without an accent mark means your. So it refers to the your of the same person who would classify as this second person singular informal tu, but it just means it's the possessive pronoun instead of the nominative pronoun. Just a fancy way of saying that tu without an accent can't stand alone. It has to actually come before a noun or something that is being possessed. Tu libro, your book. Tu manzana, your apple, something like that. Tu idea, your idea. But if we say tu and we mean the tu with an accent mark, then that, of course, can stand by itself in front of a verb. So tu comes la manzana, you eat the apple. Tu eres una buena amiga, you're a good friend. So that's the difference there. Kind of small, but important to know.
Yeah, that's That's important. I see. Sorry, I see a question here above, where Alicia wants to know why we are dropping the yo in the sentence that we showed previously. Yo veo la televisión. I think that was the example sentence, and Dana answered correctly. Yeah, the yo is embedded in the verb. So just remember that, as Anna says here, it is actually correct to drop the personal pronoun in sentences, because since we change the verb forms in Spanish, we don't always need to duplicate it. It is only for purposes where we want to indicate that it's me, like yo veo televisión, I'm watching TV, and it's not anyone else. So just remember that. And in Spanish, the verb might also show up alone without any personal pronoun, which is very, very common. And the same happens with él ve la televisión, where ve would be the verb form for él, he, ella, she. So sometimes when we see the sentence ve la televisión, we don't know who is watching TV. It might be him, her, you, formal way to address people. So Spanish is a bit kind of confusing sometimes, and we need context. So the context tells us everything what we need to know.
I think that kind of feeds into this question from Susan David, where she's saying, could you please pronounce L and L, the, so L, he, and L, which means the. Again, I don't hear the difference. And there actually is no difference. So here we have to also rely on the context of what we're hearing around these words to tell us which one we're talking about. So they sound the exact same. And because they're only one syllable long, you can't really shift the stress from one syllable to another with an accent mark. You only have one choice where to put it. So you say él means he, L, pronounced exactly the same, means the for a masculine singular noun. But you have to know, you have to be listening around that word to know what someone's talking about. Because if someone says, él tiene dos hermanas, he has two sisters. That's the word. I am having such a hard time translating today. He has two sisters. You know that the L you just heard is the subject of the sentence. So it would be the pronoun él or he. But if you say, el libro tiene muchas páginas, the book has many pages, then you hear that the L comes before libro. So you must, it has to be this definite article, the, even though it sounds the exact same as él tiene dos hermanas, el libro tiene muchas páginas. That it's this, the context of the words that follow, or in some cases come before, that tell you which one you're listening to. Yeah. But when it's written down, the accent mark will be a clear indicator, because L, the pronoun, has an accent mark, and L, the article, doesn't have an accent mark.
Yeah, that's correct. But maybe we should have we should see another example where we see this difference. I like this one because I think many of us like to drink tea, which is té in Spanish. But we have also the same word with the same pronunciation, but without an accent mark, which is té as well. And without an accent mark, it means yourself as a reflexive pronoun or as an object pronoun, like we saw also in the previous episodes. Te llamo esta noche, I'll call you tonight. Or te vistes por la mañana, you dress up in the morning. So again, these words are pronounced exactly the same, te, but if we are at an accent mark, we are talking about t in English, and without an accent mark, we have a pronoun, an object pronoun. And we have many other ones, like very useful ones where, I like this example, Mari. Yo quiero té, te amo. Yeah, I want some tea. I love you. So there we see the different meanings. And again, te is pronounced the same. Yo quiero te amo. Yeah, that's a good one. And I like this one, David. Maybe you can say something about it, because this example is very useful. You might know the verb saber in Spanish, which is irregular for the first person singular when you use it with yo. So what happens when you conjugate this verb for yo?
For yo, the conjugation of saber becomes sé. So a common expression you'll hear all the time in Spanish is yo sé, or yo no sé, or yo lo sé, I know it. But it's important that when you're writing out this expression that you always mark the E in sé with an accent mark, because if you don't, then you have the word sé pronounced the same, but it is this kind of universal word that comes up in Spanish all the time. In many cases, it is an object pronoun or a reflexive pronoun, which we've talked about at length in other episodes. And we still haven't finished talking about it. It's a really cool word, but it's also kind of a pesky word in that it appears in a lot of different contexts. But I like to think of it mostly as a reflexive pronoun or an object pronoun. And we talked about this weird case where if you have the indirect object pronoun le or les, meaning to them or to him or to her, then if it comes before an object pronoun starting with the letter L, lo, la, los, las, then that le or les becomes se. And I can't remember what week we talked about that, but if you want a refresher, feel free to check out our earlier videos. But that is a tricky concept.
Yeah.
The point that I wanted, well, I'm sorry, David, what were you going to say?
No, David, I think we are going to take a whole episode to talk about this word.
Yeah.
Say without an accent mark, it's very useful in Spanish.
Right.
Just as a sneak peek, there are 7 different functions of the word say in Spanish. Of course, we don't need to learn them all by heart, but it's going to be useful for everyone here to have a quick review of the uses of say in Spanish.
Yep.
So I think we can also show another word, which is also very, very useful. You might have already seen these ones, sí and sí. Sí without an accent mark is the word that we use in conditional sentences. And also for indirect questions where the answer is yes or no. Like, for example, si vienes mañana, compra algo en el supermercado. If you are coming tomorrow, buy something first in the supermarket. Whereas we have sí as an answer, yes, I'll do it. And that yes always needs an accent mark in Spanish. If it's yes, don't forget the accent mark. Okay. And I think there are some other words, some other cases where we use these stress marks to highlight differences. But I think, David, it's better to not mention them here in the session. Let's everyone discover them in their learning journey, because I'm very sure that you'll keep seeing them all the time. And if you have any other question related to this topic, please let us know. So I see that there is a long comment by Phyllis. Most accents are used in words. Yeah, exactly. So I like this. Maybe it's too long. Yeah, it's a long comment, but I think it's a good way to put this to sum up the rules that we apply in Spanish to use stress marks. If we are writing a text, we need long words we will surely apply the rules for words ending in s, n, and vowel, and for words ending in consonant that are not n nor s. But in the other case, where we have these very short words, make sure you understand the difference, and this comes always with practice. As Mari said before, you can also come up with sentences like I like tea, I don't like tea, me gusta el té, no me gusta el té, and yeah, I'll visit you next week. Te visitaré el próximo fin de semana. And there we see that we use stress marks in our everyday life when speaking in Spanish.
I see a good question from Kelly that I'd like to try to answer. So she says, how do you know if the stress mark is related to the tense? So, for example, past tense, or the sound of the word, or just distinguishing between two different meanings for the same word? I'm confused by accents. I too am confused by accents, Kelly, so don't worry. And I'm sure a lot of us are. One example I thought of to address this question, David, is like the first person singular present tense conjugation of a verb like comprar, and then the same verb. So comprar means to buy, and in the first person singular present tense. So if I'm talking about I buy, in the present tense, I would say, I'm going to type this out, yo compro. So we see, according to our rules that we learned earlier, we know that because compro ends in a vowel, the vowel O, that the stress will fall on the second to last syllable, compro. So that is both in writing, we see there's no accent mark here, and when we pronounce it, we put the stress on the second to last syllable, so we can hear clearly and we can read clearly what we're talking about. It's compro. So we know, okay, this is the first person singular present tense. That means I buy or I purchase. So we take the same verb, comprar, and we have a sentence like this. Compró un lápiz. So compró now has an accent mark over the last vowel, or it's the last letter in the word, but it's also the last syllable. You see that it's spelled the exact same as compro, but there's just one difference in that you have this little accent mark here. So it's the same verb, and it has the same meaning technically, but we're actually changing both the tense of the verb, and we're changing the person, so who's doing the action of purchasing. So in this case, moving the stress to the second syllable, compró, changes both the tense, like I said. So now it's going to be in the past tense. The preterite tense is what it's called, and it's one of the two simple past tenses in Spanish. And I don't think I've ever covered that in an episode, but it's definitely a good topic to cover, and we will get to it at some point. But compró is the past tense, the preterite tense for the third person singular form. So él and ella, he and she. If we wanted to say that he or she bought or purchased a pencil in the past, then that would be compró. So we're using an accent mark here to change the stress in the word as we pronounce it from compro, I buy, to compró, he or she bought. And we see that we can distinguish the two forms because it sounds different to us and it looks different. There's an accent mark over that last O. So David, what else would you say about that?
I think it is always useful to have an English word just to reflect on this. Like, for example, record and to record, where we have also a different meaning depending on where we put the stress on the word. So Spanish is very sensitive in that case as well. Compro means I buy, compró, he, she bought. If I want to say I bought, I would say compré. So usually when we are learning Spanish and we learn the past tenses, which are a bit more complicated in Spanish, I know, because we have verb conjugation. I think everyone learns the endings. Like if you have the verb comprar, you drop the ending and then you add a with an accent mark, just to say I bought. You add the ending aste for tú compraste, you bought. Él, ella compró. I think this is a way to learn this, but what we want to mention here is why and how this affects also the pronunciation of these words. Since Spanish conjugates verbs again, we need a lot of vowels, we need a lot of endings that change also, that reflect this, that represent this person, this subject in the sentence. But I think we can we can talk about these topics, verb tenses and even modes in Spanish in one of our future sessions, because I think everyone is very interested in understand this topic.
So yes, that's a great way to kind of wrap up accent marks in conjugations. And I see that Jerry asked a question, would it ever be right to say él compró un lápiz, keeping in mind that he doesn't know how to get accents on his keyboard, which I see might be a problem for a couple of you. And I think last or 2 weeks ago, some people mentioned that they didn't know how to type accent marks. And that is a really important thing to know how to do if you ever want to write something in Spanish and you want to make sure you're not typing compro when you mean compro, something like that. So I forget how to do it on a non-Mac computer because I've just used Macs for so long. If you have a Mac, you would want to type, you would want to hold Option and the letter E, and that should kind of put like a hovering accent mark, and then you get to choose what you want to put under that accent mark. So Option E and then the letter you want to accent should work. If you don't have a Mac, there are some more shortcuts. I mean, you should definitely be able to type accents on a non-Mac because I know people do it all the time. You might want to Google how to do that. It shouldn't be too difficult, but we can try to find the link for you as well. But that's just an important thing to know how to do if you're ever typing something out in Spanish, just so you don't get two different words confused, or so your reader doesn't get confused, especially. Mm-hmm. Yes, but Jerry, you would be correct with accent marks. Él compró un lápiz. He bought a pencil. And that is the question that I had seen. Let's see. So another question, can we get a replay of this if we had trouble getting the video? Of course. This is something I wanted to mention as well to anyone who's a newcomer. Welcome. We do these every week, Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And if you can't catch them live, you can always catch them after we put replays on both this Facebook page that you're on right now and on our YouTube channel, and we'll drop the link to that below. So feel free to catch up on past episodes all the way from the first episode, which I think was in maybe late April or early May, all the way up till now. And feel free to suggest topics too that you want to see us cover in future episodes, either in the comments here or we can drop a link to a Google form as well for you to send those ideas. Yeah. But just because this is your first or second time does not mean that you have to fall behind at all. We want these to be so inclusive for everyone, and we want you to feel comfortable asking questions and making suggestions and all of that.
Mm-hmm. And David, I see here a question by Noah. What's the origin of the word lapis? I think Levia answered this correctly. This comes from Latin, where lapis meant stone. So it used to be the stone that we used to write something with. So Spanish is a language where we have many words that were exported from Latin. And this is one of them.
So I see Phyllis has posted some helpful shortcuts for typing accent marks, and it involves numerical codes, which I remembered being correct. So feel free to look at her comment or Google it yourself. There might be other ways to do it too, but this is one way that I've heard people talk about. And then also Dana had a great comment as well. If you're on a Mac like I am, you don't have to do the Option E combination. You can also just hold down the vowel that you, or if it's a letter like N that also has other special character variations, you can just hold it down for a couple seconds and then you'll get some pop-up options to choose from. I find that that's a little slower than just typing Option E and then the vowel, but feel free to use whatever works for you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, David, I think we are done with this topic, stress marks, for now. We'll have a review on this topic in the upcoming weeks, where we will also have some other reviews related to topics that we already presented in the previous episode, on the previous episodes, actually. So stay tuned. We'd like to, always say, use these stress marks, try to understand when to use them, why they are so important, and your Spanish will get better once you also understand and apply them, use them also in a correct way. Because I can tell you something, native speakers have many issues with stress marks, because we know where to stress words, but we also struggle with the difference between L and L, with and without an accent mark, tu and tu. So native speakers drop them as well, and it's very complicated to understand the meaning of a sentence when someone is typing, writing a sentence, sending me a sentence without accent marks.
One parallel I can think of that just came to me, a little bit different, but maybe similar, is using apostrophes when writing in English. So you have forms like it's and it's pronounced the exact same, but with an apostrophe before the S, it stands for it is or it has. Without an apostrophe, it's is the possessive form of it. So they mean very different things, and English speakers use them out loud all the time, and there's never an issue. Same thing with your and your, Y-O-U, although they're spelled a little bit differently, but making the apostrophe analogy, one has an apostrophe, one doesn't, and then sort of like there, and there, they sound the same to us, but we know exactly which one we mean when we speak it out loud, but sometimes writing them down can be really tricky. You have to remember, oh, I actually mean this form and not this form. So it's something that native speakers struggle with all the time, and don't be discouraged if it's something that causes you trouble.
That's great, David. So I think we are done for today.
Yeah, we'll try to keep it a little bit shorter just to be mindful of everyone's time. But as we wrap up, we'll just say thanks so much again for being here with us. Always such a pleasure to see the same faces and new faces. Tell your friends to join us every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be back next week. Excited to present you some new information. If you have ideas for what you want us to talk about, like I said, comment them below this video, and we can also submit a Google form, or we can give you a Google form to submit suggestions as well. In the meantime, stay in touch with us on social media at Babel USA, on Facebook, where you are right now, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok even. And we have a Quora space called Everything Language, and we'll put the link below to that. And then, of course, Babel Magazine is our digital content magazine, and it is always being refreshed and updated with really cool articles about language learning, Spanish a lot, but all of the languages we offer as well, and more. So that's a great learning resource and tool. And that's kind of all I have to say, other than we look forward to seeing you next week. David, what do you have to say?
Thank you very much for your time. It's always great to see you. I was just noting down the topics that you would like us to talk about in one of the next episodes, like the difference between enfrente and al frente and delante. I just noted that down for us. And when to use tú and usted. They are very interesting topics. Keep commenting, keep suggesting topics, because we take them very, very seriously. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here. Please stay tuned and see you all next Tuesday, the same time.
I'm going to put these links that we mentioned here. So other than that, I think that's it. Thanks again, everyone.
And Marilyn says subjuntivo. Yeah, subjuntivo is a great topic. I think it's a new world. But yeah, we can also talk about subjuntivo.
I love el subjuntivo. It's difficult to understand even what it is, but I think that you people can handle it. You're all very smart, and it comes up all the time. It's an important concept to know. So we'll try to address that soon.
Yeah.
Okay, have a great week, everyone. See you next week.
See you, everyone.
Bye.